Presently in schools, children who are thought of as low or irritable get labeled with an ill representation for the rest of their school career. Dr. Stuart Shanker advocates for those children who are deemed low and difficult, and he changes the perspective by reframing their behavior as possible stressors that they may be dealing with in their lives. Examples of these stressors include environmental distractions such as lighting, noise, or scent, possible hunger or exhaustion, or stressors at home. These are a few of the many reasons why, as educators, we must not assume the worst about a child, but instead work to understand life from their point of view to help them succeed in the best way possible. Shanker gives numerous examples of instances where a child is unconsciously overwhelmed by something they may not even notice, and their self-regulation steps have worked to nurture the child back into a healthy state of well-being. Without a fit mental or physical well-being, learning is not a priority for that child. In most circumstances, children who are showing signs of disengagement or hyperarousal are unaware of their behavior and often unable to control their emotions or actions. So telling a child to calm down or to try harder negatively impacts that child and communicates the assumption that these are easy tasks for them to complete. An example Shanker uses within his novel is about a boy named Stephen. Stephen's first few moments in this world caused an immense amount of stress on him as he experienced a difficult birth, had a lower than average health, and was placed in a bright neonatal intensive care facility that most likely played a role in his hypersensitivity throughout life. His parents, unable to fully comprehend the needs of their child, began Shanker's steps on how to help Stephen self-regulate, and they learned of Stephen's environmental hypersensitivity and how to modify these hypersensitivities in a way that allows Stephen to go from a state of survival to a state of hypoarousal. There isn't a single child who, with understanding and patience, can't be guided along a trajectory that leads to a rich and meaningful life.
We invite you to think back to a time in your childhood when you were dealing with a stressor that was significant enough to cause you to become extremely closed off. Perhaps it was even something a little above your maturity level. Now imagine someone trying to tell you what they think you need to do to feel better or be better. Does what they're saying make sense to you? And if it does, are you likely to absorb the information and actually put it to good use? In my case, I can't remember a time when I was able to comprehend any reasonable advice while in a state of such extreme anxiety. Shanker states, when a child is in distress, we feel an almost reflexive need to try to reason it away. The problem is that the systems in the brain that he would need to process well-intentioned reason go offline when he's hyper-aroused. He truly doesn't register what you're saying. The very first thing to do is bring those systems back online. Now imagine yourself in the presence of an ancient tree, abundant with animal life and in full bloom. You sit quietly with the tree for a period of time and bathe in its tranquility. Gently, your anxiety begins to slip away, and after a while, you find yourself in a state of mind that is more willing to explore these complex emotions.
Building off of the previous quotes, Shanker states, regulating a child is not at all the same thing as controlling a child. Rather, it is concerned with managing the child's arousal states until such a time as the child can do this on her own. Learning how to self-regulate in states of hyperarousal is not an ability that people are born with. It is something that must be learned. Children need time, patience, and guidance from adults to learn this specific skill and to be able to self-regulate on their own. At a young age, a child is unable to identify and differentiate between certain feelings. They don't have the ability to pinpoint exactly what feeling they are experiencing and what an appropriate reaction to that feeling might be. Let's say Jimmy, a 5-year-old boy, gets into an argument with his best friend Sam over a Transformer toy. If an adult is attempting to mediate the situation, it would be unhelpful to break up the argument and expect a meaningful resolution right away. Stopping the boys and forcing them to find a solution in a state of heightened arousal will get us nowhere. The boys need time to think, time to breathe, and time to move out of the state of arousal before coming to an agreement. If the boys are given the opportunity to take time, think about their feelings, and reflect on the argument, they will be able to come to a more successful ending. As they learn and mature, it will also give Jimmy and Sam the ability to self-regulate themselves in future moments of arousal.
Every single child is born with the capacity for selfless behavior and consideration for the well-being of others. Some psychologists have argued that there is an innate violence gene that some children have worse than others, and that the only way to knock it out of them is through harsh disciplinary actions. Contrarily, Dr. Shanker's research suggests that the human brain is intrinsically wired for empathy, and that if a child is not displaying pro-social behavior, there is an interference of some sort that is usually due to stress overload or hyperarousal in one or more of the 5 domains. If a child is acting out, it can be easily misinterpreted as misbehavior or antisocial behavior instead of stress behavior. Like many of us know, stress shuts down our ability to think clearly. Stress also shuts down our ability to mind read, or in other words, our ability to look beyond ourselves and comprehend others' actions or emotions. Dr. Shanker suggests that if a child is not showing empathy, it is most likely due to stress interference of some sort which is not allowing the brain to empathize like it's naturally wired to do. So how can we nurture natural prosocialness? Let's take a trip down to Birmingham, Alabama, USA. Meet Austin Perrine, a sweet 4-year-old boy who is working hard to help fight homelessness in his hometown. When Austin learned that some people have so little that they can't afford food, he asked his dad if he could use his weekly allowance money to help feed people in his community. Every week, instead of buying toys for himself with his hard-earned money, Austin buys sandwiches and hand-delivers them to people in his community who need it the most. So how does a 4-year-old become so selfless? Most parents want their child to display attributes that indicate good character. If every single child is born with the capacity for selfless behavior and consideration for the well-being of others, what are the ways in which we can foster the growth of a child's innate ability for empathy? One way is through self-regulation. When a child is able to identify their emotions and feel supported by their caregiver in times of distress, they are better able to identify and relate to the emotions of others, then provide support much like their caregiver has modeled for them.